There's a growing belief to push for bold and sometimes radical yet sustainable solutions to meet future city requirements. Citizens and businesses alike are demanding such results. This session explores current and future activities for planning, maintaining, and growing great cities. So in this light, I'm asking the panelists, what are the biggest problems you see facing, your technology planning today when looking at maintaining and growing great cities? Maybe Marco, I'll hand it over to you to start.
The major problem, of course, is just the size and complexity and bringing businesses along from the business process perspective, right? And traditionally, I think most of my co-panelists can probably attest to the old school way of delivering initiatives, which still is very valid, but that waterfall way where you spend a lot of time up front putting together requirements documents and so forth. Whereas I think the way we're trying to overcome that challenge is moving more to that agile methodology. When you think about what the pandemic has done, it's given us that opportunity to deliver increments of a solution, certainly a holistic, but deliver those increments and keep enhancing it. And so that's certainly something that the city has done. And when you think about when we went to when there was lockdowns and so on, the city was able to transform and bring a lot of those services that you used to have to come to a counter for. In some cases, we had one location in the city as large as Toronto where you could get permits and licensing, and we brought that online. And so I think it's, that big problem that we're facing is just the sheer size of these applications and solutions that have to be implemented, and how to deliver those in a really effective way while ensuring that customer experience is the number one priority, so that the ease of use for our residents is considered throughout the process.
It makes sense. And a lot of it does come back down to that customer experience and how do you make it easy and seamless for them to do it. And especially when it get into that it's intuitive. Otherwise, you'll find that they won't go for it and you don't actually get anywhere. You end up putting it in, but it's not used. So yeah, I agree with that. Customer experience is really an important component.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add is that there's complexity, especially for cities with legacy applications that help run our operations. It's often really complex to look at how to modernize those legacy applications, or we've grown up with different solutions for different divisions kind of in a siloed fashion, and now are looking to what is that enterprise solution that can help bring those efficiencies. And I think the other thing that you always have to keep in mind with cities is we serve a very diverse group of customers. So it's not necessarily about a shift to digital, though that's important for options. It's ensuring the channels, whether it be in person, via phone, or maybe someone opts to use a digital channel, that service experience from a customer journey is consistent.
You're talking about, bringing more digital services online, getting a seamless experience, from physical, from your counters to that digital. It sometimes opens up, and we've been talking about this for a number of years about the digital divide, and wondering, given the mandate of municipalities and cities, maybe you could describe a little bit about your current and future approaches to addressing the digital divide.
Yeah, I can speak to some of the work that's been happening here in Hamilton. We've been doing some basic stuff around providing, for example, public Wi-Fi to parks and spaces like our bus terminal to make sure that those are part of the digital divide, may have means to get connectivity. But that too is complex, right? If you think about digital divide, it's, do you have connectivity? And oftentimes, can you get affordable connectivity, especially if we're talking about those that are marginalized within our community? Then do you have access to a device? And then do you have the skills to use that? And if you're missing any of those three, then, you can have them, but if you don't know how to use them or interact with them, you're still part of that digital divide. So I think for cities, it's about, where can they offer services? Is there collaborations with community partners on delivering skills, whether it be libraries that are delivering digital skill training, or it could be device donation? programs, public Wi-Fi efforts, digital literacy efforts. In Hamilton, we've launched a digital equity grant that's part of a grant program. It's a 2-year pilot that's specifically focused at community partners, bringing forward funding applications to deliver programs that will help support the digital divide within our community.
Exactly as Cyrus has outlined, you want to ensure that your services are offered and available to everybody. And so I think we do a number of things. Last year, I know we did some great work as it related to passing what was our digital infrastructure strategic framework, which provides a lot of base principles for ensuring equity and diversity within any technology solution implementation. One thing and an area that certainly I'm extremely passionate about is ensuring digital accessibility through every solution we bring, and not only for our residents, but it's also for our staff, ensuring that the solutions that we implement are accessible to everybody. The other thing too is looking at all the ways we can make a platform available across different devices. So whether it's a mobile responsive app or using the app itself is extremely important, because again, depending on whether you're using cellular or using a city location to come in and use a desktop there to receive services, and then offering that services in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, I could echo for, in the case of Innisfil, a lot of things being the same as that Marco and Cyrus are mentioning. And one of the things that we noticed, especially with the early days of the pandemic, when everybody switched to online schooling, that we have a mix of, Innisfil is a mix of both urban and rural areas. And in our rural areas, online schooling did not work so well. When you had 3 kids and you have the best you could get was 5 megs down, it was very challenging. And that really highlighted what some of that is. So to respond to that, we actually did have a lot of access points in some of our public areas like libraries and arenas that obviously couldn't always go into them, but we'd paste them so they'd be accessible in the parking lot so that people could come in and at least get online in some of those. Through our library and our Idea Lab, they have a lot of services there as well that kind of help address that divide through training to help residents get up to speed and learn some of those technologies, as well as even just access to technologies through their hack lab and things to go and build things and learn how to use that technology.
What do you see as the role of the municipality and of the business community within, your cities and within the tech or innovation ecosystems, R&D, whether it's universities, labs, whatnot? Where do you see those intersecting in fostering the growth of great cities?
As a city, you do have to think about your partners. So I can speak to, Hamilton. We work closely with our post-secondary institutions. We work closely with some of our anchor institutions like hospitals, and then we have things like our port, our airport, as well as our transportation and goods movement sectors. We have our regional innovation center. We also have what's called the Center for Integrated Transportation and Mobility, which is one of the Ontario Vehicle Innovation Network regional technology development sites. And when it comes to the innovation ecosystem, it's about finding those opportunities that work, that you can maybe sometimes try things either on a smaller scale pilot or and get your feet wet without maybe exposing or taking on a huge chunk of risk.
In today's tech industry, and certainly, to the point of governments and being risk adverse, but also needing to be able to scale. That interoperability between systems and platforms is extremely important, because that's what allows us to build those partnerships with so many different vendors. I can tell you, we on a number of occasions have engaged with many of our different business partners and vendors and universities to advance a number of different pilots, be it sensors to measure even temperatures and even water within the trees that we've planted. So those little creative ideas came out of partnerships with different municipalities. We had even with Google, through the pandemic, we quickly partnered to test some AI and the use of chatbot through leveraging their AI engine, right?
So how do you drive change in such a risk-averse environment? Both, I guess, managing up, right, within the organization, as well as when it comes to staff in driving these, innovative initiatives forward?
I can start on this, and I think one of the big ways is making those business cases to show that outline what that problem is, what are we trying to solve, and what are some of the different ways to do it, and out there and through that outlining what some of those risks are and how can you mitigate them so that they're manageable, and that can kind of help. That will help get the others that are more risk averse or have to deal with that risk.
I've been with the city for 19 years, so I'm well versed in how it operates. But I can tell you this: deliver, just deliver, give results, and show and try to demonstrate to the leadership that sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off. And I think, what better time did we all have in the municipal space, certainly in IT, which I'm sure you have all three of us around the table, well, four of us, of course. I just looked at that as an opportunity to finally rip that Band-Aid off and say, you know what, we need stuff urgently. We need to deliver to our residents because our doors aren't open at the moment. And so we're going to show you what we're really capable of. And that's exactly what we did at the city. And I can tell you, just within my team alone, our team, and so proud, we delivered over 140 solutions within a year and a half. And, I can't go without saying, and I think the pandemic really helped us do that. I think even the public are becoming a little more forgiving of our ability to get solutions out for them that makes their lives easier.
You talked about a lot of these successes that you've had, through the pandemic, and be able to, digitize a lot of the services. What are the risks, the business risks of not modernizing?
You look at a large tier 1 municipality or even a tier 2 city, the range of services that are covered, most businesses wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, whether it's water, sewer, garbage pickup, managing golf courses, managing parks, forestry, public health, vaccination programs. It's a massive portfolio of services. And I think, to the points that were made earlier, if we can continue to show those incremental improvements, it's the expectation. It's the expectation of council. It's the expectation of our citizens. So not doing it, not to state the obvious, is not an option. But doing it in a manner that shows results is really kind of the status quo. I think that we have to be proceeding and going forward.
The real business risk of not modernizing is going out of business, is being rendered useless. And that is a scary thought. And I don't think we would ever get there. And I think the passion, certainly within our city, and I could probably easily say for Hamilton, Innisfil, and every other municipality across Canada, this great country, is that we're trying to push that envelope. And I'm often reminded when this question comes up is, you've heard about the CEO saying, oh, we don't have the funding. What happens if we train these people up? And the CFO goes, yeah, but what if we don't train them and they stay? Right. So that whole idea of making sure everybody's, if we keep it where we are, you're not moving forward. And in fact, if you're not investing in that move forward, you're staying stagnant and become irrelevant.
Yeah, I agree with what both Marco and Saris are saying. The other thing that I want to add to that is by staying still and not doing anything, you end up losing control of your data. Somebody else is going to come in and do it for you. And that comes back to Marco saying you become relevant almost. The other thing that would get in there that is the risk is through not modernizing, you're not offering the modern services. At some point in time, that's going to start affecting your economic development as well. Any businesses moving in are going to go somewhere else because they have those modern tools and services available. So it's maybe not an immediate thing, but that is something that would come down the road as well.
With all this innovation and approaches, planning, modernization, all the work that you've been doing, how will you know you're successful? How do you measure success of these modernization initiatives?
I think there's a couple of things. So I think adoption is one. So as we see, maybe if we're talking about providing parallel digital services, the adoption of those services, and maybe over time a shift to some of those channels that complement, say, in-person or phone-based channels. I also think, satisfaction. So I think a component of delivering technology modernization is also being able to measure how you're doing. So that could be through customer surveys. It could be through immediate customer service feedback, so you understand, how that's happening. And then, Marco's raised some good points, and Grant, about like you need to also think about your internal processes. So things like job satisfaction, having access to the resources, and feeling empowered to support technology and innovation within the whatever work area you have that's applicable in the city. Retention, are we keeping staff in those technology roles? Are we able to recruit new people as we see changes or people retiring? So I think those are some of the measurements that will be used to sort of gauge the success of the work that's happening across a majority of cities and municipalities, I would think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The main thing is that adoption, and does that new tool or new process stick around, or does it die off because it's not used? And it's that main thing, and it's a short term, but it's also a long term thing. Is how well does it stay around and build on it for future improvements?
Of course, now getting analytics on any solution quickly can tell you your adoption rate, and we always want that. And we certainly want KPIs. We want to see our staff more efficient because of the tools we provided them to deliver the service. But I will tell you this: the other thing that goes a long way, and more recently we've seen it, is just those random tweets. We've seen it between new solutions that we released, all the way back to, even I look at that the C2, our what we call our C2K program, our Concept to Keys program, where we launched and we had one large builder just outline the fact that previously we had a staff member who would have to come downtown to bring in a zip file on a USB key to hand over to staff. And we would sit there because we missed certain things. So we'd be trying to fire things back and forth while they sat in front of you, only to come back and we'd lose half a day of a staff. And when you hear that, and then we know that we've now brought the whole solution digitally, that I think is there's also, that can't be missed the attempt to get all these analytics and all the data that justifies it. It's also the comments, the support, the feedback that we receive from the public to say thank you.
Sometimes you get into adding technologies, but you end up adding them for the technology's sake as opposed to actually solving a problem. And if that's the case, it's not going to stick around. But when you are solving a problem and it's making either residents' lives easier or staff life easier, it has a tendency that's going to stick around, and you're going to build on it and grow it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate you joining this panel and being able to share, your experiences, your stories, your visions, your successes with each other and with the audience as well, and myself. So great to, get this time with you, and really appreciate it. Thanks very much.